Welcome back to Tipton Bros. Today, we'll be discussing 6 military surplus firearm options under $500 in 2021. Please remember that prices and availability vary widely by state, so take this information with a grain of salt. We will try and provide you with choices you may not have considered and avoid any obvious candidates. Before we begin, I must disclose that I am no expert and never claim to be. Information, while widely accessible, can be conflicting, so I apologize for any errors I may make. Now, let's get into it. Starting out our list at number 5, we have selected the Model 1891-41 Carcano infantry rifle, also referred to as the Model of 1941. At just over 46 inches in length and tipping the scales at 8.5 pounds, the 1891-41 Carcano is a simple yet robust rifle. Engulfed in the Second World War, Italy was fielding a variety of small arms, including the newly adopted 1891-38 carbine. The carbine was well liked by troops, but paled in comparison to the aging 1891 long rifle. In the North African campaigns, Italy soon took notice that the 1891 Carcano was better suited to the environment and distance of engagement. This prompted officials to adopt a longer infantry rifle once more, being designated the Modello M9141 Fucile. This was essentially a revamped Model 1891 Carcano, a rifle that had valiantly served the Kingdom of Italy during the First World War 2 decades prior. The barrel of the M41 was marginally shorter, and the rifling was switched from gain twist, or progressive, to standard, and the rear sight was refined. The Model 1941 Carcano is so akin to its predecessor that the rifle was issued with the same bayonet. Roughly 820,000 Model 1891-41 Carcanos would be produced, with 240,000 units being completed by Armagera Cremona and 580,000 units completed by the Tourney Arsenal. Rifles produced by the Tourney Arsenal are stamped with the abbreviation FAT and the year of manufacture. The model of 1941 is chambered in 6.5 by 52mm Carcano, a cartridge touted for its flat shooting capabilities. In fact, Italy did not formally issue scoped sniper rifles, but instead weeded out the most accurate specimens from each batch. These M41 Carcanos would be branded with the insignia of the Cesno Nacional, depicting 2 superimposed rifles and a bullseye target. These hand-selected long guns would be dealt to designated marksmen, who would use them to devastating effect. Post-World War II, the model of 1941 Carcano fell quickly out of favor in its homeland. A majority were refurbished and promptly surplused, finding refuge across the globe. A large portion of 1891-41 Carcano rifles in North America today were imported in the 1960s. The Model 91-41 was unfortunately a popular victim of sporterization or modification. Many you find today will bear these changes. An unaltered example in original condition will usually run the buyer between $400 and $500, but prices continue to creep upward. Don't miss your opportunity to snag one of these quality rifles. Now, on to our next pick. Coming in fourth, we have chosen the Bertier Model of 1916 carbine. Embroiled in the First World War, France was issuing the newer 1907-15 pattern Bertier rifle, alongside the now archaic 1886 M93 Lebel. 2 designers of the Châtellerault arsenal recognized the disparity in firepower between the German Gewehr 98, capable of a 5-round capacity, compared to a laughable 3 exploited by the 1907-15 Bertier. After 9 months of design and development, an updated 5-round magazine system would be adopted November 28th of 1916. Accompanying this 5-round magazine to the trenches was the recently adopted Infantry Model 1916 Bertier, a full-length rifle, and the Musketoon Model of 1916, a carbine. The pair would be denoted by the designation M16. Both are an exact copy of the 1907-15 pattern Bertier, with the addition of a 5-round magazine and upper handguard. Production for the carbine in particular began May of 1917, being dealt to cavalry, artillery, reconnaissance, and other rear echelon troops. When all said and done, 800,000 of these handy musketoons would be completed. The model of 1916 carbine would serve up through the Second World War and into the late 60s with a number of French units. But the Bertier M16 carbine was not limited to Europe, being used in small numbers by the NVA in the Vietnam War and even in the Middle East today. Chambered in 8x50mm rimmed, also known as 8mm Lebel, the M16 carbine does a surprisingly decent job at absorbing recoil despite its size. At only 37 inches in length and 7 pounds, the model of 1916 carbine is a breeze to handle. Any first-hand account in combat will tell you the same. As for accessibility today, the M16 carbine is ubiquitous on both the secondary and third-party market. They can be had for between $350 and $500 on average, depending on condition, year of production, and manufacture. Shootability must be considered when buying a Bertier, as 8mm Lebel can be both elusive and expensive. Disregarding this caveat, the M16 Bertier carbine is a fantastic addition to any collection. Now, on to our third pick. Holding our third spot, the Chinese Type 24. This rifle goes by many names, including the Chiang Kai-shek rifle, Jingjiashi rifle, and the Type Zhongzhang. We'll try to alternate between designations. The Type 24 was based on the German Gewehr 98 action and refined, reducing weight and overall length, which produced a rifle much like the K98. Production began in 1935 for the Chiang Kai-shek rifle at the Gongjin Arsenal, but the project would suffer a few setbacks. Quality control issues would plague the already struggling Chinese industry, which slowed the number of finished Type 24 rifles to a snail's pace. The Second Sino-Japanese War kicked off officially July 7, 1937. Thankfully, China had somewhat boosted production by that point and was able to produce 400,000 Chiang Kai-shek rifles in the 8-year span of war, although encroaching Japanese forces did push machinery further inland, causing a flare-up in quality control issues and decrease in production. The Republic of China Army would stave off the Imperial Japanese superpower until the Allied victory in the Pacific War, but this was at great cost, enduring unspeakable atrocities and war crimes committed by the Japanese. Approximately 600,000 Type 24 rifles were produced from 1935 until 1949. The Chiang Kai-shek rifles would swiftly be abandoned for more modern American aid in the late 40s. Following the end of production, although out of frontline service, the Type 24 would be issued as a reserve weapon until the late 80s. It would also see action in both the Korean and Vietnam War. Today, it still serves as a ceremonial rifle in the Republic of China Army. Currently, the Chiang Kai-shek rifle can be purchased for near $500 or more, with most being in fair condition. The Type 24 saw hard use. Dark stocks, wear marks, and bare metal are commonplace. These rifles are also chambered in the ever-present 8mm Mauser. The Chiang Kai-shek rifle took part in a significant portion of history and displays the scars to prove it. I would highly recommend the Chinese Type 24. At number 2, the Belgian FN Model 24. Crafted in the wake of the First World War, the Model 24 was devised by officials of Fabrique Nationale, better known as FN. Based on the Gewehr 98, as many rifles of the time were, the FN Model 24 is a shortened and lightened Mauser platform, not unlike our previous entry, the Chinese Type 24. FN was not actively trying to equip the Belgian Armed Forces exclusively, but rather seek out additional military contracts. Fabrique Nationale, in total, would contract with over 24 countries, too many to list here. FN catered to specific requests, such as bolt orientation, fit and finish, and of course, caliber. You can find the FN Model 24 and 30 in 8mm Mauser, 7.62 NATO, 30-06, 7.65 Argentine, and 7mm Mauser, amongst others. As one might guess, being purchased by a myriad of countries would expose the FN Model 24 rifle to its fair share of bloodshed. Most notably, the Second Sino-Japanese War, Chinese Civil War, World War II, and the Korean War, with conflicts dragging on from there. The most historically relevant being World War II. On May 28, 1940, the Belgian army would surrender to the numerically and technologically superior German forces. The FN Herstal factory would continue production of the Model 24 under occupation, in conjunction with other firearms, such as the FN Model of 1922. Model 24 rifles put into service by the Wehrmacht were designated the Gewehr 220B and chambered in 8mm Mauser. These are arguably the most expensive variant of the FN Model 1924. After the liberation of Belgium in February of 1945, FN would continue production of the Model 24 for another 19 years. Manufacture of the rifle would halt in 1964, but usage was still widespread. Many are used as parade rifles in South America as well as in its home nation of Belgium. The FN Model 24 is not exceedingly common in the US today, but can be found with moderate ease. Production numbers were tough to nail down, but I would estimate quantities of between 250 and 650,000 rifles. They will cost the buyer between $450 and $500, again cutting right into our limit. Cost, as always, will depend on condition and especially with the FN Model 24, country of origin. Keep your eyes peeled for these rifles as they come in a variety of configurations, making them great for collecting. Now, our honorable mention. For our honorable mention, we have selected the Chinese Type 88, also referred to as the Hanyang 88. The Hanyang 88 rifle was adopted in 1895 by the Qing dynasty and was a direct copy of the German Gewehr 88. Although it would see two updates in 1904 and 1930, the Hanyang 88 would largely remain unchanged throughout its life. Production would run until 1944, with an estimated 1.1 million being completed. The Type 88 was produced with the Chiang Kai-shek rifle and helped the Chinese ward off droves of Japanese soldiers during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of Type 88 rifles were captured by the Japanese during the conflict and reissued to troops in non-combat roles. The journey of the Hanyang 88 rifle did not halt there, being utilized by Chinese and North Korean forces during the Korean War. Moreover, small batches were quietly gifted to the NBA by way of China during the Vietnam War. Carbines of the Type 88 also exist but are far scarcer than the full-length rifle. A vast majority of surviving Hanyang 88 rifles in the US today are in fair to poor condition, with many favoring the latter. Cracked stocks, deep gouges, and shot-out barrels are run-of-the-mill. To me, this adds character and showcases the hard use the Type 88 endured. $350 to $500 is a constant for the Hanyang 88, but I feel it is well worth the price tag. Now, for our top spot. Retaining our number one spot, the Astra 400. Adopted in 1921, the Model 400 replaced the Campo Hero pistol, which was in service as early as 1912. Both pistols bear a striking resemblance to one another. The Model 400 was one of the first commercially viable firearms produced by the Astra company, and for good reason. The Astra 400, often referred to as the model of 1921, is one of the most rugged and sturdily built handguns of the interwar period. Chambered in 9mm Largo, the Astra 400 is direct blowback operated, employing a stiff recoil spring and heavy slide to absorb recoil. 9mm Largo is without question pushing the capabilities of a direct blowback action, but that is what makes the Astra 400 so easy to handle. The weight of the Model 400 soaks up what little recoil is left, which lends to its shootability. Being easy to point with a low bore axis and comfortable in the hand, the Astra 400 makes use of an internal hammer, furthering resistance to grit, grime, and the outside elements. It proved to be near indestructible during the Spanish Civil War, garnering praise from those who carried it. The Model 400 would also see extremely limited use by Nazi Germany, with approximately 6,000 examples being issued to the Wehrmacht. An unknown number of those 6,000 were converted to 9x19 Parabellum, which I can only presume would be much of the contract. Two further evolutions of the Astra 400 would serve with the Wehrmacht: the Model 600, a clone chambered in 9mm Luger, and the Model 300, a downsized copy chambered in .32 automatic. The Astra 300 was particularly popular with pilots of the Luftwaffe. The Astra Uncenta Arms Company pushed private production of the Model 400 until 1950. Collectors largely ignored the Astra 400 until recently, as Spanish firearms, primarily those from the Ibar region, have unjustly earned a lackluster reputation, stemming from the First World War with mass production of the Ruby pattern pistol. 106,000 pistols were completed, which is a comparatively low number when talking about surplus firearms, but they seem to be quite prevalent. They can be had for as low as $350. This low price does come with a hitch. 9mm Largo is near unobtainium. If you do stumble upon a box of commercially produced 9mm Largo, chances are it will be rather expensive. To me, this is of little consequence, and I think the price of the Astra 400 is justified on history alone. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. We will be putting out similar content in the future. We are a small channel, so a like is greatly appreciated. As always, I am no expert and never claim to be. Until next time, on Tipton Bros.